I'm going live right now. It should.
I don't know where. Does it just pop up on?
Let me see your phone. Yeah, go to my Facebook. Go to Eric Matthew Keenan. You should see me live, and then we'll go from there. And I think you have an in.
Farmington, New Mexico. Okay, here we are.
And then you should have an in. Click into that video, and I'll send you another little invite if you're not showing, but I think you are.
Here's where I'm at. If you want to, I don't know if you can see it.
Okay, now go down to the video.
Um,
Does it say Eric Matthew Keenan's live?
oh, here we go. Yep.
All right, now click into that video.
I'm going live right now. Okay. I don't know where. Does it just pop up on? Let me see your phone. I'm getting your old. Yeah, go to my Facebook. Go to Eric Matthew Keenan.
There's a second delay, so I just sent the approval, so it's adding you right now. Turn your phone sideways for me.
I just had to hit. Okay, right. Okay, yeah. You should see me live, and then we'll go from there. And I think you have to. Oh, okay. Connect. It says connecting.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay.
I'm going to get off the other one, and then we'll start the video. Technology. All right, I got it. All right. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you perfect. Awesome. Okay, 1 second.
Good.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I got like 3 different devices. It's horrible, right? I wish it was just one button. A buddy of mine, I'm not going to say his name because he's big on Facebook now. I've been kind of trash talking him because he went back on his word, but he's got like 14 different devices going when he does this. So, see, let's make sure Don's there. I know there's a little lapse with a little bit of a delay.
Oh, there we go.
All right, there you are. I'm going to have you introduce yourself and start talking about your story. Every family who's been affected by illegal alien criminals. That's what I call them. They're not immigrants. They've never paid a tax in our country. They're not citizens. I go back, I look at the stories, I analyze everything. And one of the most amazing things I actually saw that happened to you was you had been arrested for talking about, the federal laws that they don't, that they're not using. Our own government is using state laws, not federal laws, and allowing these guys to get away with many crimes. It's amazing to me. I just thought that was great. I would have done the same thing.
Well, I didn't end up getting arrested. They just handcuffed me and.
I mean, I didn't mean to say arrested. I meant handcuffed. I'm sorry. Sorry
No,
about
no,
that.
that's okay. I was ready to be arrested, so, whatever. Are we live now?
Yeah, we're live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. I'm the same way. Don't worry. I'm just talking. I'm getting ready for you to start. I'm sharing the video everywhere.
Okay.
I'll let you
Um,
introduce yourself and tell us your story and talk about Drew, and we'll go from there.
Great, thank you. Well, as you advertised me, I'm Don Rosenberg. I live in Southern California. Almost 8 years ago, my son Drew was a law student in San Francisco. He was coming home one night around 5:30 on his motorcycle, and an illegal alien made a last-second illegal left-hand turn. They collided. They were both going very slowly. Had he just stopped, I wouldn't be on tonight because my son would have been fine. But instead of stopping, he accelerated and drove over my son's body. His helmet had come off and wedged under one of his tires, so he backed up, driving over him a second time, and then went forward, driving over him a third time. By that time, somebody had gotten out of their car, stood in front of his. He stopped, and his rear tire was on my son's abdomen, and 5 men had to pick the car up off of him. So we're almost at eight years at this point. Eventually went to trial, did get convicted. He was, he was originally charged with vehicular homicide. The judge at the preliminary hearing reduced it to vehicular manslaughter. The judge actually testified for him.
Really?
Which, yeah, I mean, people say they don't believe me, and then I send them the transcript and they read it, and that's exactly what happened. So he eventually went to trial, took about a year and a half, got a 6-month sentence, and was released after 43 days.
No, that's what's crazy, and I'm not going to cut you off. I'm sorry, but every single story I hear, if it's Sabine, Agnes, Wendy, I mean, there's 20 interviews I've done already. They just, it seems like they don't want to follow the law.
Well, they don't. I mean, when I was going through this, and of course I didn't know anybody else that this had happened to, I thought my story was one of those, you see on 60 Minutes or Nightline or something, and you sit there and you go, this couldn't be happening to somebody in the United States. What I learned over time was that my case was not the exception, it was the rule. And I've talked to all the people that you were mentioning and so many more, and it's mind-boggling. Even in, I mean, I was in San Francisco, but even in conservative areas, the same thing happens. These people become protected class, and it's just hard to believe that this is what's happening.
I think another thing that always stirs me when I'm doing one of these, or like, because I'll go do a bunch of research because I don't want you to think that I don't care enough to look into what's going on. Just like what I do with, because I knew Agnes before I knew the whole story. And then I was introduced to Sabine and everybody else. But it almost seems like the paperwork's too hard for them to do. And I think the most dangerous thing in what I'm seeing with our government right now is that they don't want to follow the law. It's almost like I don't want to say I want to be careful what I say because I know there's certain people watching, but I want to make sure that people know that they're not federally following the Constitution. It's almost like they kind of backskirt and use a state law, but they don't want to follow the federal laws. And I forgot one of the, I can't believe I forgot this. California has that something 54, is that what it is?
Yeah, the sanctuary state law.
Sanctuary state law. I can't even believe, and now New Mexico, where I live, Albuquerque, New Mexico, I live in Farmington, is a sanctuary city. So it's just mind-boggling that people are not waking up and they keep voting for these crooked people who are damaging the lives of many families.
I don't think most people really know. When the sanctuary state law took effect this past January, a survey was done, and I think, if I remember correctly, I could be off, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on target. 81% of the people either had no knowledge or limited knowledge of what it was, because they don't pay attention. And when they do pay attention, most of the media is not honest about what's really happening. So, but for the most part, it's just lack of paying attention. And until something terrible happens, I mean, when somebody who's protected, and we've already had cases where people that were protected by it have committed crimes, but when somebody does something, really heinous, or it's a crime that gets national attention again, like a Kate Steinle or now a Molly Tibbetts thing, then you'll hear people, oh my God, what is that? How did that happen? What's going on? Look, in California, we passed 2 propositions that basically let people out of jail. But it's the way they got pitched. I mean, one was called the Safe Communities and School Act. And what it should have been called was letting as many people out of jail as we possibly can early and not putting people in jail for committing crimes act. And of course, crime went up and now people are scratching their heads. Oh, how did that happen? So I think it's mostly people don't pay attention. And
it's like lack of knowledge But even on Fox News, you don't get enough time. Every single family that I ever talk to doesn't get enough time for their story. They don't get enough time for the facts. They don't get enough time to talk about sanctuary city and the laws. You know, I feel sorry for you and the rest of the people who live in California right now with Jerry Brown. That guy is just the craziest person I've ever seen in my life. And in case after case after case that I look into and that I study, this guy's breaking the law. He's not following the Constitution. I wish everybody had a pocket Constitution in that courtroom, because a lot of you guys that go and support people running for office and you want them to support the border and getting somebody who will be proactive in protecting our children against illegal aliens, it almost seems like they forget that we have a federal law, that their federal laws, I meant to say, that they're breaking, trying to use these state elected laws that Jerry Brown has put into place and many others like Dianne Feinstein. It's just nuts.
Well, the crazy thing is Jerry Brown, compared to the legislature, is the sane one. And it's going to get a lot worse.
That's sad, yeah.
Probably when Gavin Newsom, it looks like Gavin Newsom will be the next governor, and he'll be 10 times worse than Jerry Brown. Brown, I think, goes in and out of lucidity at times. And I'm not saying that as trying to make a joke. I mean, I think it's true, because sometimes he'll say something and do something that's like, wow, that's exactly what you should be doing. And then he'll turn around and, do something that you have to question his sanity. But the real problem is the legislature. It's, and whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, that old saying, power corrupts, Lord Acton saying power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, because in California, the Democrats have not just majorities, but super majorities. I think they don't have one right now in the Senate because somebody was a bad boy and had to resign. But basically, they've had super majorities. They can do whatever they want. And that's what they're doing. And they introduce crazier and crazier legislation, not just for illegal aliens, although that's a big part of it. And the things pass. And then somebody figures, boy, if that could pass, I'll do something. And the next crazy thing comes along. And so it's, we're in tough shape out here. And I think it's going to take some major catastrophe to wake people up and to change things.
How did you feel when, and I've never asked this question. As many interviews as I've done, I've never asked this. I should. How did you feel when you saw Donald Trump finally giving you guys a platform that you needed? I mean,
well, I'll tell you, I was sitting right where I'm sitting now, where I do, most of my work and whatever. And I always have the TV on as background. And, I'm from New Jersey, so I won't say I've known Donald Trump, but I've known of Donald Trump for a long time, back into the early 70s. I grew up right outside of Atlantic City, where he built some casinos. And, so he came down those steps and he started speaking and he started talking about illegal immigration. And my response in my head, and anybody who has seen Raiders of the Lost Ark will remember the scene. And I said to myself, Trump, why did it have to be Trump? I mean, first of all, I didn't think he'd even, win the primary, let alone win the election. So, it was almost like, a waste. However, certainly every Democratic candidate and even all the Republican candidates, nobody else took that position. So I have to give him credit for that. And I'm really happy that he did. I'm a little disappointed in some of the things that he does, because I had hoped at the time, and as a matter of fact, I met him maybe 5 weeks after he announced he was running, because he was in LA and Sabina was there and a couple other, Jamil and a few other families that he wanted to meet. And, in LA, you either get someplace, you're either an hour early or an hour late. So I wanted to make sure I got there on time, and I ended up being an hour and a half early. So I got to speak to Hope Hicks and Corey Lewandowski for a long time. And I just looked at it as, well, the guy's getting a lot of publicity. He's going to get a lot of coverage. And if at the very least, he can educate the public on this issue. Unfortunately, I don't think he's done a very good job of that, both when he was running and now as president. Um, he doesn't. I don't think he understands that the bully pulpit doesn't mean to bully people, and the argument against illegal immigration's an easy one. You just have to know the facts, and that's not him. I mean, it's not him on any issue. That's not the way he acts and the way he is. So that's been disappointing, because it's obviously you're not going to get the legislation passed if you don't start convincing people in the middle and even some on the left that this is an issue. You have to differ from the candidates that you typically support. And I think, if we got those people, we'd be more successful legislatively. And if he loses the House, then you can forget the next 2 years. Nothing's going to happen.
Well, and here's the thing too. When I'm watching, because I'm a Trumper, I like Trump because he's not a career politician. He messes up all the time, but he's like one of us. If we were doing the things he is, not having the judicial presidents or having the law background, a lot of these guys are attorneys, like Lindsey Graham, who was talking to Brett Kavanaugh about certain things when they were talking about his confirmation. I like the fact he messes up because it shows we're all human. The one thing I really can't agree with him on is at least there is a platform. I've not heard one Democrat, I grew up a Democrat before I changed parties, mentioned how important it is to protect our borders or have our military down on the border, especially in California. I've been down towards San Diego, where if you go to certain parts of that borderline, it's wide open. What they're showing you on TV, they're not showing you the truth. I mean, you can walk across the border, across the beach if you really want to. They stage these things. It's all commercial. It's all TV propaganda for somebody like Jeff Sessions to go down there and make a speech. I think we should really draw the line in between parties and get back to the basics with being citizens. We pay taxes. So it would be really nice if the taxpayers would just come together and know that our taxes are now being affected. I mean, they're going up every year. We're starting to pay for illegals to come into our country and have a better education. I mean, one of the things I did hear from another family that was affected was when the Dreamers stuff started. I remember when they started talking about the Dreamers, how we needed to stand with DACA. That was a temporary solution to a bad problem that we already had in this country. And I mean, your story was one of the first ones I heard before the most recent. And the craziest thing about one of the families is, and I think this is going to go back to the Tibbetts family, is they were for open borders and they were for not building the wall, with open borders and sanctuary cities. I mean, it's a very sad thing that a family that was open to the discussion of just allowing illegals to come into our country was affected by the one thing that they stood for. I mean, Pete Steinle, probably one of the most popularized cases, but when you go into every single case, like Judy Zito, or if you go into, Kathy Hall was just on Fox News, I think, the other night. We need to start protecting our kids. It's going to be my generation. I have a 2-year-old daughter. It's going to be my generation who's not doing what they're supposed to do, allowing our kids to be affected by this.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I can't bring my son back to life, but I see the problem. I think, and this is, comes back to, educating the public. Most people's experience with illegal aliens is a positive one. They either don't see them at all, or they're mowing their lawn, they're cleaning their house. The people come across as as nice people. So there's a lot of sympathy for them. They hear the stories. The problem is most of the news media only covers most of the news media has made them the victims. And they ignore us. Now, I was one of the of 13 families that Trump had in D.C. at the end of June, And that's when the big issue of separating, quote, separating kids from their, or it wasn't even separating, ripping children from their mother's arms, which never really happened, but they did separate them. And they were getting all of the press, and these people are being separated for a period of time, a short, relatively short period of time. And of course, we get no coverage. And we were asked to come to DC. We did. Trump had a nice press. Well, we got to meet him first, which was nice, and then we had a press conference with him. And what was the result of him telling the media, "Why are you ignoring these people?" They either ignored us or trashed us. There was there was an article in the LA Times. Of course, the article started. This was the day after the press conference. The article started on the front page, quote, talking about migrants, and then 8 pages back, towards the end of the story, there's a picture of Trump and a couple of us, and they get into the story, and the story opens up saying that there were, 13 families who had lost a loved one who was killed allegedly by an undocumented immigrant. Well, 11 of the cases of the 13 were already adjudicated, and or the person died in it. So there was no alleged, they tried to even make it look like, well, maybe they really weren't killed by those people. And then about a week later, this guy wrote an op-ed, and he's a contributor maybe every other week, and he basically said, we were there to demonize immigrants.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And what was so absurd about that, out of the 13 families, 3 of them are immigrants. But that's when you see every day on the news or in the paper, these sob stories about, somebody. I mean, the LA Times actually started doing yellow journalism. There was a headline one day in the middle of all that, big front page story, headline, "Will I ever see my daughter again?" You start reading the article. First of all, she was talking to her every day on the phone. And 3 days later, they were unified. So, but, myself, Sabine, Agnes, Royal, we'll never be unified with our kids again. So somehow that's okay. But if you're separated for a couple of days, a week, even a couple of months, it's the end of the world. And how could that happen? So the problem is, so much of the population, even people that are more conservative, they feel very sorry for these people and don't even know what's happening. You started rattling off some names. Again, like I said, it's been almost 8 years. Only 2 cases made national news. One was Kate Steinle, and the other was Molly Tibbetts. And Molly Tibbetts is out of the news already.
Oh yeah.
And if you brought up the fact that the guy was illegal, oh, you're a racist, you're a bigot. What does that have to do with her death? And then, of course, the standard line, right? And then you get the standard line: immigrants and illegal aliens, or they never use the word illegal aliens. Immigrants and undocumented immigrants commit less crime than the native born. Well, first of all, it's not true. But even if it was true, it's irrelevant. What are you basically saying? Because Americans commit crimes, it's okay for people to come here illegally and commit crimes? But again, it softens the blow every time somebody reads it, because most people, even if they're paying attention, they don't pay a lot of attention. And when I say that to them, if they say, oh, matter of fact, when I was getting on Facebook, there was a comment, right after the little ad blurb you put that I was coming on, where the guy, again, oh, Americans commit more crimes. Well, even if they did, that doesn't justify having illegal aliens
That
here.
guy's a jerk. I'll make sure to call him out. That's not right.
Yeah, no, but it gets said over and over and over again, and then people use it. I mean, read comments, just from the general public, not necessarily journalists, and I use the term loosely. You will always.
Oh, I know. Trust me.
You always see that comment over and over and over again, like, okay, it's okay my son was killed because John Smith killed somebody, so it was okay for Roberto Gallo to kill your son.
I am going to make you laugh, and don't get mad when I say this, because a lot of people are mad at Alex Jones, and I know you know who that is. About 4 or 5 years
Yep.
ago, when the Angel stuff started, I was supposed to go do a segment or something because I had a mutual friend, and a lot of my friends are now getting on the show and doing their thing or whatever. I decided to call in on it. I think it was Alex Jones was one of the first people to talk about what was going on. And today, was it today or yesterday? He was the first person, him and Owen Schroyer. And I like free speech. So as long as the guy has the right to be an American citizen, he has a right to free speech. And he was showing people coming to the border on horseback with machine guns, carrying bags, which in my acute assumption would be that they either had marijuana or cocaine. These people are raping and pillaging and abusing our justice system. They're coming into our country, and I'm just going to be blunt about it because I've just heard so many of these stories, uh, and creating victim after victim after victim. If they're not tethering cars together with rubber bands, if they're not speeding in a high-speed chase on alcohol or some kind of substance, and then the cops are the people who are doing the police work, like Billy Inman when I was talking to him, or Brian Lee, and you hear how they didn't want to talk to them as people. It became paperwork, and it was too much to do. It's just nuts. I wish you would see real journalism. You have somebody like Juan Williams who gets on there, and as soon as you start talking about families who've been affected by illegal alien criminals, they're calling you the racist and the bigot, and you don't know the Constitution and being the melting pot. Well, I really don't think that we have the right people on TV. These uh, people, in my opinion, become the biggest clowns I've ever seen with a camera at their face. They haven't been affected yet. And someone like him, who's a contributor, they make about $50,000 a year just to talk and smack their gums together, are never going to see the true pain until they lose a child. Me, I hope I never have to experience that, and that's why I'm doing this now. It's just crazy.
No, and then look, all of us appreciate you doing this and getting the word out. Look, I've written to Juan Williams maybe 5 or 6 times, and he's never responded once. And when I write, I've written more letters in the last 8 years than the rest of my life combined. But when I write, I never, unless somebody's asking me, I don't give my opinion. I stick
Yeah.
to facts. I source them. I was a publisher myself for 15 years. It was, trade magazines in the entertainment business, so it wasn't anything, really serious, even though the Hollywood studios don't, they think
Trust me,
everything's serious. But
I thought I wanted to be a drummer and be in the music business, so I kind of know what you're talking about. No.
but I know how to research. I'm really, I've done statistical analysis my whole life. So when I send something, it's you said this, however, here's the truth, and I give sources. I never will say something without having a source to back it up. And my sources, I specifically stay away from certain sources, even though they may be accurate. I know they'll be ridiculed. Like I wouldn't quote Breitbart. I wouldn't quote Fox News. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It's just that the people on the left, as soon as you say that, they won't even bother to look it up. They'll just go, Breitbart, it's a lie. Fox News, it's a lie. And
Or
and Williams,
you have certain entities like Shepard Smith, or you have Fox and Friends who are so liberal they won't give you 5 seconds to even to source anything. I had wrote a letter to Eric Bowling. Is that his name? Brawling?
yeah,
I
Eric,
forgot his name.
yeah, he's not on anymore, but yeah, that's
Yeah, he used to be on the Five. I'd wrote a letter to him because he was the only one who brought up what was going on with illegal alien criminals, which he was on the Alex Jones show too, and they were debating back and forth. And like I like watching every. Now they got CRTV. I like CRTV. I like having a fresh news source. But you're right. If you try to state something, it's almost as if they don't have their facts straight.
I don't think they care about their facts. They have a narrative, and the narrative, and it's left and right, but it's worse on the left. And I was a lifelong Democrat. I'm not a Republican now either. I guess I fall into and I'm not an independent. I'm a nothing. I'm part of the Nothing
You're a
Party.
nader. No, yeah, I'm just kidding.
So, um, maybe I'm the Truth Party. Let's put it that way.
Well, I would
But
say you actually fall into the Constitutionalist Party since you're somebody who believes in the Constitution, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we may interpret certain things differently, but however, let's put it this way: when the Supreme Court makes a decision, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means it's the law. And if they make a decision and that's the law, then that's the law. And that's, and all you can do is try to change it or do something else. But the law is the law and you have to follow it. So,
Unless you're an illegal alien criminal, and then you have a better chance of just going back over the border to
right.
become a repeat
Well,
offender.
it's funny you say that because that falls into, if you talk about birthright citizenship and that line in there under the jurisdiction thereof, that's the critical part. There is no birthright citizenship for illegal aliens by law. There is because that's what they've decided to do. There's never been a case dealing with illegal aliens. And if you go back and you read the transcripts, and I forget what it was called at the time, it's a congressional record now. I forget what it was called back then, although it started with a C as well, I remember. But when you read the transcript of the guy named Howard Jacob, who was the author of the 14th Amendment, it was very clear that both by his testimony and people asking him questions, that clause under the jurisdiction thereof doesn't mean if you're living here that you're under the jurisdiction. And obviously the illegal aliens prove it every day when they write. If they do something that they think they're going to get caught, they run across the border and go home. So they're not under our jurisdiction one bit. However, we keep giving their kids, and not just them, everybody else, citizenship, which has only made the issue even harder to deal with, because then it's always, oh, how can you, deport me with my child? Now, of course, every child born in this country to an illegal alien is also, and then you never hear this mentioned, they're a citizen of their parents' country.
Yes. I have said that in many videos and got ridiculed for it.
Yeah, well, they are. And a matter of fact, when Trump got elected, I know particularly in Los Angeles, there were a lot of people going to the Mexican consulate to fill out the paperwork to get their kids citizenship. Now, it doesn't need to be approved. You just need to file for it. Because as long as you're a citizen of Mexico, it doesn't matter where your child is born, they're a citizen as well. So when you hear this thing, separating, well, they don't have to separate them. They can go with them. It's just, again, don't tell the public that. Make the public think that by making, the mother and or father go back to Mexico or El Salvador or Guatemala, or whatever the country is, that the kid has to stay here because he's a United States citizen. And then, of course, you hear, well, how can you send them back to a country that they don't know and they can't speak the language? But when the kid who's 17 is coming here and he can't speak the language and the only country he's ever known is Honduras, well, then it's not a problem. He can come here and he'll learn. Well, it's the same thing, the other way. But you don't hear any of that, and the media doesn't talk about it. And you brought up a good point. I've been on Fox and Friends a lot. I've been on, Tucker Carlson's show. I've been Laura Ingraham's show, and I appreciate, and Shannon
Tucker.
Green.
I've met Tucker. He's cool.
I do too. He's, and well, they've all been very nice to me. But the point you made, and it's a good one, whether it's me or Sabina or anybody else, they mostly want us to talk about what happened to us and not let us get into it. I've said to these people, I want to debate these guys. I know, you will. Tucker has people on. Laura will have somebody on. I want to debate them. Set up a debate between a victim and either an illegal alien or a illegal alien advocate supporter, because that's, you can't have a monologue. It has to be a dialogue. And I've been trying to do that for years. made the same offer to people on MSNBC. They don't respond at all. That
Have
they'll
you
have a
tried to get on
panel of not.
Newsmax? Oh, sorry about that.
Um, I was on Newsmax once quite a while ago, but the thing is, I really want to be on the left-leaning stations and broadcasts, because whether it's Fox or Newsmax, whatever, you're preaching to the choir. Now, it's good to do that too. People need to hear things, and I always hope maybe there's one person listening who is on the left, media-wise, is going to say, I should look into that. The problem is that, I think if somebody, let's say on MSNBC one day, you're too young, you may know the situation, but you won't remember it, when Walter Cronkite came back from Vietnam, and he,
I know
he
about it, but I
broke.
wasn't. I'm young. Yeah, I'm younger than that.
Yeah, no, I was, I remember I was watching it, and it was earth shattering for this guy all of a sudden to say, I don't normally editorialize. However, and I'm paraphrasing, I was in Vietnam, you're being lied to, we're never going to win. Now, would we ever see that moment on MSNBC or NBC or ABC or CNN? No, because the person knows they'll lose their job the next day. They'll be gone. I can't believe that all of those people and all of every single Democratic House member and senator, and I can't believe that all of them believe the exact same thing. It's
because
impossible.
they're programmed.
It's
I like
well,
that.
it's because
They're paid to have a biased view, or they're going to lose their job. If you look at certain people who, if you look at the old CNN, when CNN actually used to do some of the news, I'm not going to say they ever really
right.
did the news, but I mean, you compare that to CNN today. CNN, no matter what the topic is, if it's anything against a patriot or somebody who is looking at a brighter future for America using the Constitution or the laws that were afforded by the founding fathers, like a lot of what you guys are dealing with criminals, they will flip it and turn it and make the guy who's on the right, who's not even an alt-right, because I'm pretty sure you're not alt-right conservative, the criminal, the bigot, the racist, the one who has the Trump hat on and he's beating up somebody so he's a part of the Ku Klux Klan, when in reality that's not what's going on. These people, and I can tell you for a fact, and I know for a fact, certain people, I'm not going to mention their names, have been interns for the CIA, have been interns for the FBI, and they are trained to have a biased opinion. No matter how many times you go on MSNBC, CBS, PBS even, they're going to make sure that you have 5 minutes, nothing longer, and they're going to tell you, well, at least I've been there before, where they're going to tell you how they want you, or talk about this, but don't go into that, or mention this fact, but don't talk about what happened and that time when you were at the courthouse trying to tell the people running for government how they're not keeping context with the laws that they're breaking by not using the Constitution. It's just crazy.
Well, it is. I mean, the sad part is, if we, and I don't have a real positive outlook on this issue in the long term. I'm not going to stop fighting, but I'm
no,
just
but
trying
you're
to
being honest. One of the pages is
be
truth.
realist about it.
Be as honest as possible.
The problem,
That's what we need.
yeah, the truth will come out, because if one day all of these people are given amnesty, what you'll see is that all they'll be doing is setting the counter to zero, and then it'll just start running again. Because about 2 years ago, I guess it was the LA Times did some articles on, and I don't think they realized what they were what they were really doing, but they were trying again to make sympathetic argument that here's all these people in Los Angeles that are illegal, and they're working in the garment industry and some other jobs, and they're not being paid properly, which was, it was valid. They're not being paid for the hours they work. They're not being paid for overtime. Of course, they get no benefits. The person who's hiring them doesn't have to pay Social Security or Medicare or any of these things. And long story short, they were saying, they're getting about $6 an hour but it's actually even less. They even had to cash, they were getting paid by check. They had to cash their checks in a certain van that would come around on payday. And I wrote a letter to the Times and I said, I don't think you meant to say this, but are you telling me then that when you make this person, if you give this person legal status, that the person who was paying him $6 an hour, and that was all in, is all of a sudden going to be paying him $18, or not paying the guy $18, but having a labor cost of $18 an hour, the minimum wage, Social Security, unemployment, all the other
Oh yeah.
things you have to pay. That's what it would have been. And the answer, of course, is no. This person, if they walk in one day and say, "Oh, look, I now have papers, you have to pay me minimum wage," the guy's going to say you're fired. And what is he going to do? He's going to go find another illegal alien to do. So you're going to set the counter to zero, and it's just all going to start all over again. And it'll only be worse because there's now so many jobs that these people have taken. If you go back to 86, 87,
Hey,
the
the
Simpson
year I was born,
Mazzoli,
there you go.
the Simpson Mazzoli, even though they only thought they'd get about 1 million, they ended up with about 4.
Uh-huh.
But that you were only filling those jobs. It's now you're filling about, depending on whether you believe there's 11 million people here or 20 million, you're filling somewhere between 8 and maybe 12 million jobs that people are being, underpaid, and the businesses are not going to pay them what the legal wages. They'll just open. And again, if your borders are as open and porous as they are now, people will come flooding over to fill those jobs. And then you're going to have all these people either not being able to find work, or where the job maybe pays $2 over minimum wage, they'll be thrilled to work for minimum wage,
Oh
and
yeah.
they'll take that job. So I mean, this is not brain surgery to do this. It will definitely happen. So
Well, I'll make you laugh. I did a video on currency, and I was talking about how if an illegal is working and they make $45,000 a year, they're making $82,000 a year in Mexico. There was one guy who I bag on all the time because I thought he was going to do great things for the Patriot movement, and I was helping support him and stuff. And I do agree with him, even though he's kind of become a schmuck. I do agree with him, Dennis Michael Lynch. If you have the incentive there, you're creating a bigger problem. If we took away the incentives of illegals wanting to come into our country, we would not have this problem. We give them so many benefits that our own citizens don't even get unless they fit into certain categories. I don't know how many kids are in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt with college. How many people have a medical bill they can't pay? And when you're looking at the dreamers or the illegal alien parent or someone who's 65 and has just been here their whole life and never became a citizen, it's kind of sad that they have more rights to the freedoms that were afforded to people born in America than we do. I mean, just nuts.
Well, it is. Look, if you, my calculations, and I know I'm higher than FAIR's, but I think they're underestimating education costs. A guy named Ricardo Lara, who's a state senator, fortunately he's terming out, but he may become the insurance commissioner. He is the son of illegal alien parents, and I don't know when they probably probably got their amnesty in the 86. I don't really know, but needless to say, he's very, very pro illegal alien, and every bill he introduces is to give him some sort of benefit. Well, so this is his number, and it's 2 years old, so it could be a little higher. His number was that all in income tax, sales tax, registration fees, everything you pay the government, that illegal aliens were paying. Now he said 2.4 billion. Other people were saying 2.7 billion. I'll go to 3 billion. I'll say, okay, they're now paying in $3 billion a year. We pay just to educate their and again, that's he's the source of that. just to educate their kids K through 12, just the direct payment, not all the little extras that come in, which is a couple $1 billion, is in California is over $20 billion a year.
Oh
That
man.
number comes from the California that comes from the California Department of Education. Now you can go to their website, you will not see a line item that says that. You got to do the math. On one side, they've got here's how many students we have who have at least one parent who is, quote, undocumented. And then you look at the other side where they're, because schools get different amounts of money depending on, if they have like 70% of the kids that go there are under the parents are under poverty, whatever. So you got to go through all that, like LA Unified, San Francisco, San Jose, Santa Ana, whatever. They're getting right now about $16,000 a student.
Ugh.
Out where I live, I mean, my one son is graduated and the other's in college, but the K through 12 here, they're getting about $9,500 a student. So these kids are getting that much more. And then you throw on top of that, there's, the food programs, breakfast, lunch. They even want to try to do dinner, insurance costs, which again, according to Ricardo Lara, costs the state $1.5 billion a year. And all the other benefits they get add up to about 30 billion, and I think that's the low end, $30 billion a year. So they're paying 3, it's costing us 30, but somehow you keep hearing, oh, they're good for the economy. Well, I don't think so. Now, again, there is the multiplying factor of money when you buy things and whatever, but it doesn't get anywhere close to $30 billion a year. And and again, I didn't even count in their college where they're getting, tuition. There was just a column in the LA Times, a guy named Steve Lopez, who's one of the few people at the Times who will speak to me. I like him. He's a good guy. And he was doing, as a human interest story on this one girl, may or may not have been illegal. I don't really know. But he was talking about LA Unified School System. And he said that 80% of the kids have families that are under the poverty level in a city of Los Angeles. When you think of how many people that is, and 80%, that's probably because about 70% of the kids in LA Unified some of them are citizens, but they're children of at least one illegal alien parent. And then they wonder why the school system is such a mess. And I'm not blaming the kids. I'm not even blaming the parents. It's just when you have that many kids that many of them either don't speak English or don't speak it very well, how do you possibly educate them? So there's other costs. It's not just the money. And now they're forcing them through to graduation. Well, what are they going to do? Yep. So it's just one mess after another. And it's always, particularly in Los Angeles, illegal immigration is the elephant in the room. They're talking about how many homeless people there are and how many, because there's no housing. It was an LA Times article talking about a shortage of housing in LA County. And they were claiming they'd need 60,000 units built to get, to alleviate the shortage. But in the article, and they didn't do, I had to do the math, they didn't do it. People that are here illegally are taking up 170,000 units.
Yeah.
So it's like, what? And of course, that's why rent is so high, because there's such a shortage. And just yesterday, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors passed a 6-month rent freeze just so they can examine the problem. Well, if you have a shortage of something, freezing the cost isn't going to make it any better. So it's just, but of course, nobody ever mentions, oh, maybe it has something to do with the fact that you have all these people here that are illegal, and they will pile 4 families in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Oh yeah.
Because then they've got at least 4 people. So even though it's expensive, they've got 4 people, or at least 4. Maybe the spouse is working too, but at least 4 people to share the rent. Well, I don't want to tell Americans you have to live that way. I mean, what are we, a race to the bottom of what do we want to be, a 4th world country? 3rd world's not bad enough?
to be honest with you, Democrats are actually working toward that. They want to, they're definitely for communism and socialism. They're trying to take land rights and properties away from tax-paying Americans, and they're talking about putting more people into apartment buildings. So um, it's very scary that before you know it, we could become another China in a heartbeat. I mean, China already owns our television, our radio, a lot of our news on certain entities that are liberal left leaning, and eh, I don't know. I mean, I could go toward the rabbit hole or whatever. I'm not going to do that, but I think one of the biggest problems we have is for every so many illegal alien children that come into our nation, we're having to build schools, more apartments, newer apartments. I mean, it's really killing the economy with the cost of just having them here. Um, and they can never explain why we can't just send them back to Mexico. And I think that's one of the, you're heartless, you're a jerk. But I mean, what about our kids too? My kids now are in a homeschool, so I took my kids out of my son out of public school. He's homeschool now. He gets a better education. I mean, the things that they have to slow everybody down on to make sure that everybody else can catch up. You have to feel guilty if you fit into a certain category or if you have an opportunity to go to college. I've never seen so many people in California, thanks to Lisa and Jennifer and those that have been down there doing their videos. They're in town hall meetings. They're not even citizens, and they're yelling at the judge or they're yelling at the people who are standing up for the victim's families. It's the most pathetic thing I've ever seen in my life.
Because we let them.
Yeah, we let 'em.
I moved here in 1989 when theoretically there should have been 0 illegal aliens, based on the Simpson-Mazzoli. But of course, they're not. Maybe they were now legal, but the people were still here. And at the time, my son Drew, the one who was killed, was about 5 years old. And when I knew a lot of people out here because I've been in the entertainment business my whole life. And good friends of mine said, where do you think you're going to live? And we talked about that. And this is 1989. They said to me, well, if you're going to live anywhere that's part of the LA Unified School District, make sure you budget sending your son to private school because the schools are atrocious. And it's not, I mean, it's now changed why they're atrocious. But at the time, he said, and he lived in the San Fernando Valley, they were busing kids from southern Los Angeles County into the San Fernando Valley because they didn't have the space for the classrooms. And he said these kids would get in the bus at 5 o'clock in the morning. They'd, bus them up here to class. Half of them were falling asleep because they were up so early. And so he said to me, my son is sitting in class, my son and daughter are sitting in class and nothing's happening. They're not doing anything. And he said, I should have taken them out. I mean, they were both close to graduating. And that was in 89 when there were still a lot of, the majority of the kids in school were citizens. Now the majority, well, the kid may be a citizen, but again, the parents aren't. And I don't fault the kids, I don't even really fault the parents. I fault the politicians that let this happen. I mean, for those people that honestly come here to give their kids a better life, I don't condone what they did, but I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
For the politicians that are willing to destroy us,
right?
It's like, why? Is it really, is your short-term political career worth? Is that what you want your legacy to be? I mean, I know, you talked about Jerry Brown at the beginning. He's been trying to beat the legacy of his father.
Yep.
Who built this, basically built the educational system in California, built the road system in California that at the time was the best in the country. And now it's the worst. So he does, so he thinks, I mean, I don't know what he thinks. And it's not even just immigration. We have this, I don't know if the bullet train nonsense makes it to you.
Oh, yeah.
It's look, it would be great to have a train that can get you from, and it's this thinking that pervades everything. It would be great to have a train that can go from Los Angeles to San Francisco in like 2.5 hours and cost less than flying. I
Yes.
won't argue with that. But they can't do it. Well, it's the same thing. It would be great to be able to bring every person in the world who is underprivileged to the United States and make their life better. I won't argue that it wouldn't be a great thing to do that. It just doesn't work. All you're doing, you're making
Yes.
their lives a tiny bit better, and everybody who's already here's life much worse. And if you really believe, and I'm a pacifist, if you really believe that, well, I got, well, another
No,
story for another
I
day.
can agree. I can agree with you on certain things being like that.
But what I'm saying is, if you really believe that El Salvador is such a mess that every single person that's living there has to, that's quote not in a gang or not a criminal, needs to come to the United States, well, then you know what? You need to invade that country, and you
Yeah.
need to say to if you can't clean up your mess, we are, because maybe not by the government, but your people are invading our country and they're hurting us because you can't control what's going on in your country. So, I mean, that's what we should be doing, not saying every single person that, is, quote, threatened by a gang. And of course, you never know if it's true or not, or domestic violence. And I go off on a domestic violence thing here, because right now that's what you're hearing for all of the left is saying every single person that comes here and claims domestic violence, the woman says, oh, I'm a victim of domestic violence, they should be given asylum. Well, California's sanctuary state law, and I'll give you the one, the major case that's happened. Last year, there was a woman in Santa Rosa, California, which is Northern California, about an hour and a half from San Francisco. Her boyfriend was abusing her. She called the police. They came and arrested him. He was illegal. He had been deported once before. So when his fingerprints went through the system, ICE contacted the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, who was holding him, and said, we want this guy. We'll come and get him. Let us know when you're going to let him out. A couple days pass. The guy bails out. Instead of calling the ICE office, and they were about an hour and a half away, they waited an hour and a half. Then they called them and they said, okay, we're leaving right now. We'll be there in 90 minutes. 16 minutes later, they let the guy out. 16 days later, he murdered his girlfriend.
Wow.
When the Sonoma County Sheriff was asked, why did you do that? Why did you let him out? Oh, we're sanctuary. We had to do that. So you're telling you have to let these people come to the United States because they're victims of domestic violence in the countries they live. And then when they get to the United States, you're allowing them to be victims of domestic violence because you won't deport the guy who was the domestic violence, the perpetrator. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And you would think a crime like domestic violence would be considered a violent crime since violence is in the name. And sometimes it is, but under California law, a lot of times it isn't. So it's the whole thing is just crazy. It's
Well, let me ask you this, and I don't want to keep on all night because I got stuff to do. But right now, ICE is being attacked fictitiously. I mean, they are just being attacked left and right, and wanting the Democrats just want to destroy them and make them a never was police force. How do you feel about ICE? I mean, how do you feel about the importance of having ICE in California when they're allowed to do their job? I mean,
well, first of all, I have a lot of friends in ICE. Tom Homan has become a good friend of mine. I know he's now out, but he was the
I was actually
director.
watching a video of him not that long ago.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and and it's obviously an extremely important law enforcement group. Now, the irony when these people started screaming about ICE, we need to abolish ICE. They're, ripping kids from their parents. Well, again, nobody was ripping kids, but it wasn't even ICE. It was the Border Patrol. So they
Right.
didn't even know what these people were doing. And, there's always going to be in any law enforcement agency something that doesn't work right, and somebody who either goes off the rails or does something they shouldn't. But when somebody escapes from prison, we don't tear down the prison. We try to
Right.
fix it and make it a little bit better. So ICE is extremely important. They do a phenomenal job with their hands tied behind their back. Um, it's even if the Democrats take control, it's not going to happen. But I think if anything, they need to be strengthened. They need to be given more ability to do their jobs. We need to, when they're arresting somebody, we need to speed up the process. Whether the person's going to stay or leave, is irrelevant, but they need to speed up the process. It takes way too long for cases that are pretty, and I'm not talking asylum now. I'm talking about criminal cases.
Oh yeah.
They're I looked at my own case where first of all, Obama was president at the time. They weren't even going to deport the guy.
Hmm.
They told my congressman, because I went to meet with him and I wanted to make sure the guy was detained and then deported. They told him, we're not going to deport him because he's, quote, only committed one crime of moral turpitude,
Oh my
which
goodness.
is, government speak for he's only killed one person. What's the big deal? But the thing is, even at that, when they finally, and it took me months and months and months, and help from some other people to get the guy deported or get him first detained and deported, it took from January until April to get him deported. And and that was just 2 hearings. And it was pretty simple because it was, basically it was, why shouldn't you be deported? And that should have taken about 20 minutes, start to finish.
I've
So
heard the
these,
same thing that you're just talking about, just like what Maureen told me. It's
yeah, so the
we
case is just,
become sympathizers and apologists for criminals. It's stupid.
right. They just drag on and drag on and drag on because when you go to an immigration hearing, most like the fact that he killed someone was inadmissible. It was just, you're here illegally and you're not allowed to be here. So why should you be able to stay? And if he then said, well, I'm an asset to the community, I do good things, that would have made the testimony of the ICE attorney about, him killing somebody admissible. But that's really what it comes down to. And because people will say, oh, he got deported because he had a broken tail light. Well, nobody gets deported because they have a broken taillight. They're caught because they have a broken taillight.
Yes.
And when they run their record and they find out, well, we don't care about the broken taillight. The guy had, 3 felony convictions and then escaped from, from wherever, or again, sanctuary, they let him out. That's not, he doesn't even get deported for that. It's he's here illegally. And only
Yes.
if it only becomes admissible if he tries to explain why he should be allowed to stay because he or she is so wonderful. So I look at these cases and it's like, what is the point? What is taking so long? And they should be able to, I know that that at Sessions, I think he said 700 cases a year or something. They should be able to do 2,000 cases a year. Most of them they should be able to do looking at a piece of paper and not even having to talk to the person.
Oh
Tell
yeah.
us why there's only, and I can't remember what they are. There's really only 4 reasons that you can give to, in an immigration hearing as to why you should stay. And then of course, if you give it, you got to back it up with some proof. So why are hearings taking months and months? And and then, years to, to even get to that point.
And another thing too is, why is it that, and I'm not going to say the numbers, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know people like Maureen and Marianne Mendoza, and I mean, the list goes on, where you guys are paying out of pocket to do all the things you're doing to bring awareness to all Americans that this could happen to you. That illegal criminal is having their court paid for, their attorneys paid for, their meals paid for, their family's meals paid for. And every time I've asked this question, there's no help going to the victim, who's the American citizen. It's disgusting.
Now, in our case, the guy had a public defender, and I don't begrudge him that. He committed a crime. I, believe that everybody should get, on a criminal end, should be represented. But he had a public defender who was more interested in getting him off than the San Francisco District Attorney's Office wanted to get him convicted. I live in the LA area, and this happened in San Francisco. So every time there was a hearing, my wife and I would fly up to San Francisco. We'd usually have to stay over one night, and that was all out of our pocket. When he finally was getting deported, he was having his hearing to be deported. He was sent down to Florence, Arizona. I paid to go down there. I paid to stay, and I paid to come back. 2 different hearings. We get nothing, no support whatsoever. And meanwhile, he didn't have it at the time, but they're doing it now. States and cities are putting up millions of dollars to give these people legal representation. Matter of fact, we were literally at the cemetery making arrangements for my son's funeral when I got a call from the San Francisco General Hospital that if I wanted my kid's body, I had to wire them $500.
Wow. Disturbing and gross. So, I'm sorry to hear that.
It wasn't a money issue, fortunately. I had the money, but I wonder how many people don't. And I know people that didn't have money to, to bury their kids.
It's like talking to Sabine. She had no idea this was going to happen. Sabina goes on vacation. She has to fly home, and people are tight on their finances. And I'm glad that you guys do have groups that are pulling together. I know about AVIAC and some of the other groups or whatever, but I mean, if we could just get the right people put in place, I truly believe that we could get some kind of funding going on, because this is never going to stop. I hate to be somebody who's going to be blunt, but we need to come up with something to support more families. I mean, when the Tibbetts case happened, these people were for open borders and for allowing illegals to come into our country and have the same rights that a born citizen does. And then they had their daughter murdered. I mean, I just wish that people would wake up and see this can happen to anybody. I mean, we have AVIAC. I don't know about the other groups that they're so proactive, but it'd be nice to get something where there's a national fund to help an American citizen who loses a family member to crime by an illegal alien.
Yeah, well, you mentioned AVIAC. I'm the president of AVIAC.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't want to put that out there without your permission.
No, thanks. Getting donations is like pulling teeth.
For now.
And I'm not just saying our organization, all the organizations. Yeah. And part of the problem is, if you look at the other side, besides the money they're getting from cities and states, they have big donors. I mean, really deep-pocketed people. You would think that our side would have the same thing because there's some very rich, wealthy, conservative people. The problem is they're for illegal immigration because they want to keep their wages down. Even if they're not hiring people that are illegal, they want to keep their wages down. Why are the Koch brothers, not on our side? Why is Sheldon Adelson not on our side?
You might have to do more videos together. I think you're starting to talk like me. Why do the Koch brothers support people?
Because it's financially beneficial for them to have illegal immigration. And there's not many. I can't think of another issue that all in this case, all Democrats and a big portion of Republicans are on the same side of. They may be on it for different reasons, and that's what makes our job so tough. I mean, I hate to be, you need money to operate. You need money to be able to, just like you're saying, to help. I would love to be able to look at people and say, hey, I'm going to send you a couple
Yeah.
$1,000 to help you get through this. If you can pay it back at some time, great. If you can't, well, that's okay.
Well, I've actually been talking to many people, and this is actually something that's on the top of the people I know. I just don't know how to get it put together exactly. But we may not be the richest, but I know that a lot of the people that want to donate money care more about their fellow citizens. I've only done one talk with Marianne about it. I was going to get a T-shirt, but there are people who are willing and wanting to donate. We've been sending money to people like Jason. Well, I haven't yet, but Jason Lowe and Chris Blow and these guys who go out there and do these protests and rallies and stuff. And I think the people like that are the biggest supporters of families like you. I know that we were talking about angel families, but we need to come up with a new term, like you were saying. And if we could somehow pull together and come up with some great ideas, we need to do that, because every single story I've heard, the illegal alien criminal had all the money they needed for the case that they were being charged with, and the American family who was the victim had to flip the bill. Maureen, Sabina, Agnes, I mean, I think Agnes even told me before she went to the Senate hearing or whatever, the amount of money for hotels and driving. And when you guys go and you do stuff for like the President of the United States and you go stand on a stage and share your story, it's all out of pocket. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure if we could pull together, we could come up with finances for a great group like AVIAC.
Yeah, well, look, there's, there's at least 50 million people in the United States, or 50 million voters, let's put it that way, that are on our side.
Yeah.
Obviously not everybody even is paying attention, whatever. But if you could get 1% of them to give $5, we'd be able to do a lot of stuff. So while I'm saying that, it's aviac.us if somebody wants to make a donation.
I will be sharing. I jacked up on my part by not sharing that website on a bunch of the videos. I already talked to Sabina and Agnes and all the families, because we were trying to figure out who's in charge of what. And when I was talking to Chris Blow, Jason, and those guys, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all them with the American Family First Project. But it's not, I want to make this clear, it's my generation's fault. You know what I mean? Because we're not doing enough for our country like what they might have done in the past. And I just haven't had enough courage to go and call you or, I hate to bug people. I'm one of those people, like when I was typing you the other day, I was typing so fast because I'm like, man, I don't want to bug anybody. I'm on my phone, so I have misspellings. You know what I mean? It's
no one who's working on this issue is bugging me. No one at all.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. But I mean, we can put together some money.
You and I should talk offline about some of those things and money, people, and whatever. And so call me.
Because
you won't be bugging me.
On a lot of our videos, we support people who are out there protesting for the president, protesting for what's going on in this sanctuary city and that, and we're sending people to do different things. And I think it's time that we start doing the same thing for causes like yours, and a lot of including yourself, the other victims that might be watching this. I tagged everybody we've done a video with. There's 4 or 5 other people I still haven't had a chance to do a video with, because it's about timing. You guys are very busy people. You have very busy schedules. You still have your own life and your own jobs. But I think that if we can get enough people that are admins within the groups, and like Jeffrey Long, there's one guy that I forgot to mention on one of the videos earlier, who knows about raising money, then I think that we could collectively come up with something. So, I don't know. I don't want to keep going on and on about that, but you're right. If you have a person like Dennis Michael Lynch, who's got 30 I mean, 3 million followers, and each person sends $1, it's $3 million. If we could get 1% of 50 million people to send $1, you would have 50 million bucks to be able to help other families. So it's all about what's more important in our country. But yeah, you're right. I'll call you offline and talk about that. I didn't mean to add that into the video. I'll share the website too on the page.
Great, thank you. So I when we did talk, you never told me how long. I gotta go
Oh,
in a
no. I
second.
was just gonna go for an hour. We kind of went over. I'm sorry about that, but if you want to end the video, how do you want to end the video? That's what I ask everybody.
Well, you know what? It's funny. A guy I went to high school with, and I haven't seen or spoken to him probably for 40 plus years. He just came up. He said I should debate Jorge Ramos, which I would love to do. I'll tell you a quick funny story about Jorge. Remember when Trump basically threw him out of his debate
Yeah.
when he was, so that night, and I'd never written, didn't know him. That night I wrote him a letter and I basically gave him a lot of grief and said, I was a publisher for 15 years. You can't, you can go in and ask whatever questions you want, but you don't get to have a debate with the person, or you certainly don't get to answer the question you want to ask them. And, figured, I'm not going to get a response because you never do. And the next morning I'm sitting here at my desk and the phone rings and I look up because I have caller ID on my TV screen and it says Univision. And I answer the phone and it was him. And although we agree on nothing, and I have asked him, let's debate, and he, maybe we will, maybe we won't, but we don't agree on anything illegal immigration. I give him credit. He will always respond to me. He will always take my call, which most people, 99% of the people on the other side will not do. So I have to give him credit for doing that. And Lee, thanks for, doing that. I'll push him a little more. I mean, he was nice enough when he had a book about a year and a half ago, came out, and it was only one chapter was on immigration. It was on a lot of different things. And he sent me the book and he, autographed. So he's actually, even though he comes across a little abrasive sometimes,
Yeah.
he's a decent person because he's willing to talk. So, and that's the biggest problem. You can't even talk. But like I said, it needs to be a debate, because when I listen to these people talk and say things, and I know what they're saying something that's not true. They're either lying or they don't know. In many cases, they just don't know. And, I'm sitting here like, let me respond to that. But, you don't see that happen. So hopefully it will. Keep pushing for it to happen, and we'll see.
Real quick before you go, I almost forgot to mention something. Angie Morphin, I'm saying her last name wrong. Angie Morphin. She's going to kill me when I say that. I always get her last name wrong. When America's Most Wanted was out, she was one of the first stories that got nationally syndicated and broadcast. She was trying to run for public office, and they turned on her. They wouldn't vote for her. You're talking about someone who's an Hispanic, who's talking about illegal immigration, and her son, who was brutally murdered. I think the one thing that we could do better, and we'll start doing that with you guys, is sharing in the groups the full story. When we see you on TV and stuff, they don't talk about anything before you get on camera. They don't lead anybody to know who you are.
Yeah, because they get, the segments are 3 minutes long.
Yeah. So I appreciate you coming on. I know it says 19 people. We had way more than that, but trust me, by tomorrow, you're going to see a lot more people who viewed this. And if I can get with some of the admins on a bunch of the pages, I'm going to see what I can do about it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, no, you don't have to thank me. I thank you for having me on, and anytime, be happy to do it. Always want to get the message out.
Yeah, and the one thing I don't do, I know you sent me your phone number. I'm bad at saving phone numbers because I used to get bugged by people, so I delete it right away. I don't know why I started doing that, but I'll make sure and contact you by email when I talk to a bunch of the other admins. And
I have your email. I'll send you my phone number.
All right, cool. You have a good night, and I appreciate you coming on.
Eric, thank you. You too, and for the people that did listen, thanks. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you. You have a good night. Well, have the American flag in the background. I want to try something different because it is about our country. The one thing that we've talked about in many videos, Sabine, you know this one, is that we give too much credit for people, to and for people who break the law. We have become public apologists in this nation for people who do not care about the American citizen. Every time I do an Angel family interview, we're going to have to change that because of what he told me off the phone. Every time we do a video with a victim who has been mistreated also by the judicial system and by the people who are supposedly supposed to be upholding the law, I find out that they're more mistreated by their own government, their own judges, and their own attorneys. And it's one of the saddest things in the world. And I've become really good friends with a lot of people that you see commenting on the video, like Sabina, who I'm going to do a video with her husband and, you know, get his side of things pretty soon. I just want to make sure it's on his time. But we need to support things like AVIAC, a great organization. aviac.us, I believe, is what it is. I just want to double check so I don't mess it up. I'll post it to this video. I'll go look for it. You can get a t-shirt to support them. I believe that you can order a shirt. You can go on the website and donate. You can always contact me to get the website. Just send me a little text message or email. Someone said I was doing too many videos in July. Well, I wish every single video would have been actually one of these videos where there's knowledge, there's wisdom, and people waking up to the truth in our country. So you guys have a great night. Jeffrey, we're going to have to do more videos. Rosanna and everybody else, please share. And maybe we can do something, Jeffrey, like you've talked about, to where we can help these people out. I just think it's disturbing that illegal aliens, they haven't immigrated, they haven't paid taxes, they are not productive citizens, get better treatment than our U.S. citizens. So on that note, you guys have a great night. We had a late start. I appreciate everybody that watches and everybody that shares. And if I can end the video with this, we need to stop the wargaming in groups and on Facebook, and we need to stand together, support people like Jason, Chris Blow, and all these other people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who does a great job with information, Gabriel Sori, Ira, Melanie. To be honest, and thanks to Tanya Burgess, if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be doing videos like this. So you guys have a great night, and there's a lot of other people I forgot to mention, but there are people who care and who share. You guys have a great night.